And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Lubbock Compact Live for February 23rd. We are back in a very big way. We have a very special guest. Aside from Dr. Nick, who's always on here co-hosting with me, we also have Dr. Wells, who is the Director of Public Health with Lubbock. And so very honored to have her on the show this evening. And so as usual, you can put your questions down in the comments, and we will see those and we will get those. If they're for us, we'll answer those, or if they're for Dr. Wells, we will direct those to her. So make sure you get your questions ready and get ready for a good show. So we got some updates really quickly before we get into the interview portion. And so this past week was the State of the City address, which the mayor does. This is the 39th annual State of the City address that the mayor does every year. And it's basically just a snapshot of where things are now versus, where they've been in the recent past. They were primarily looking at from 2016 because this council has been all together on this council, with the exception of Councilman Christian, who came on a little later. 6 of them have been together the whole time since 2016, which is pretty cool when you think about it. A lot of time to build some rapport. So they were just kind of going over, I guess, some of the highlights of what has happened from 2016 till now. So we just got a few categories that we're going to get into. If you want to see this, it's up on a couple of the news sites. It's supposed to be on the city website. I have not found it, but once we find that, we will get that out to everybody. So the first category we have here is housing. So Lubbock's housing market has absolutely boomed since 2016. So we've had record number of permits for single family homes and duplexes. That's been a 28% growth over the previous year, which was also a record. And that's during the pandemic. So our housing market is growing significantly faster than the state and the nation. And a couple of things that the mayor brought up here was that we had more permits pulled than El Paso. We also had twice as many permits pulled as Abilene and Amarillo combined. So Lubbock has definitely been growing in a big way when it comes to housing for families. And I've been attending the LIDA and Market Lubbock meetings, and I can tell you that that's just going to continue. That's just going to be a continued trend. There's a lot of work going on, and that has been going on to contribute to this growth. And so then the next category is employment. Employment is currently at 3.3%, which is pretty low. That's pretty good. So there's 752 more jobs today than there were in January of 2020. Now, the big part of this is a facility that's not here yet, but it's going to be 600 jobs. That is the Luprino Food Factory. They are the world's largest manufacturer of mozzarella cheese. So any restaurant that you've been to or that you go to in the United States and also in some other countries, if they use mozzarella cheese, it probably came from Luprino. So they are going to be building a huge facility here. That's going to be 600 jobs coming here. It's projected to be $10 billion for our economy over the course of 10 years, which is crazy. So anyway, lots of new jobs added. So for folks out there who may wonder kind of like about a career or something that could be long lasting, some of the high demand occupations were kind of highlighted here. So commercial truck drivers, obviously. So Luprino Foods, I think they said they're going to have something like 200 trucks coming in and out every day. There's work being done on what's called the Port to Plains pipeline, which is basically enhancing I-27, which is going to increase more demand for truckers. So that's going to continue to grow, not just here in this area, but across the country. So commercial truck drivers, medical is going to be a huge opportunity. If you want a good career, I would consider, and if you're going to stay here in Lubbock or in this area and you know you're going to stay here, and even if you're not, but definitely if you're going to stay here, medical is going to be an expanding market. I was just at the LIDA meeting this morning, and we actually don't have the capacity right now to train the amount of people that need to be trained in this field. So there's going to be all sorts of investment. I can guarantee you there's already investment happening in training, but there's going to be more of that. You can just expect to see way more opportunities to have a long-term career in the medical field. So maintenance and repair workers was another big one, and then computer support specialists. So the last category we'll go over here is economic development. So we've had wage growth here from 2016 to 2020, which is like 16.8%, pretty good. A big part of that was the city council just approved pay raises for LPD as well as for city staff. And so those have been really good. Another good opportunity, if you want a good job with some decent benefits, consider joining the city of Lubbock. There's all sorts of positions open, and again, they've just gotten raises. So I'll go to downtown, because downtown I know has been a point of contention for a lot of folks in the city, but the truth is that we do need a strong downtown. This is something that our city has been missing for a really long time. There are plenty of other places across the city that we very well know need attention, but we also do need a strong downtown. So the good news here is that the downtown grant program has given out 111 grants since 2016, which totaled around 2.7 million. Which then resulted in 56 million in private investment. So the mayor kind of said, for every $1 awarded in grants, private businesses have invested 20 in downtown, which is really good. What I heard at the leading meeting this morning is that the idea is not to continue to only invest in downtown. The idea is to invest in downtown until such a point where it's not necessarily needed. Mm-hmm. And then downtown itself is enough of a draw to bring people there. Then funds can be allocated other areas, North Lubbock, East Lubbock, Central Lubbock, were in particular mentioned. And so that's some encouraging news there. And then sales tax has gone up a whole lot, 32% since 2016, which the mayor credits for taking pressure off of the property tax. Mm-hmm. And so the property tax is actually now 1.5 cents lower today than it was when this council started in 2016. And a lot of folks will remember that in 2019 and 2020, the property tax was raised a penny, I think, both of those years. And that was to cover $60 million in public safety improvement projects. But in the last 2 years, it's been brought back down 6%. And of course, we're lower in property tax rate than in 2016. So what do you think there, Dr. Nick?
Yeah, when you look across the board, and this is, I think, credit to Mayor Pope, if you measure a mayor's track record in economics, and you look at the history that this council and their achievements in that period in time, it's quite impressive in terms of the job growth, the continual expansion of the city, the opportunities and the expansion of opportunities within our community, and the resilience overall of Lubbock's economy during a very difficult period in time. So across the board, you're seeing a city that has emerged from some very difficult pandemic years from an economic standpoint, doing very well. One of the places that is encouraging from a growth standpoint is that many of these new housing permits, many of them had previously been in the southern portions of the city, but in this most recent permitting rounds, it was actually the northwestern portion of the city that saw significant growth. And that's important because for the city to really maintain its center of gravity, it needs to be able to grow and expand in every direction. We've had some runaway growth to the south for some time. And what that's really done is it's sort of pulled away resources and services from more centralized locations in the city of Lubbock and really spread some resources within the community thin, especially when it comes to, say, dollars for road construction and road repair. And so these numbers are very exciting to see the growth, but it's even more exciting to see the fact that this growth is a bit more balanced between north and south because of the expansion of the northwestern portion of the city. And a lot of that is credit to, if you look at the development history of that area, credit to the McDougals for taking an interest in that area Traditionally, they do not do single-family home residential neighborhood developments, but they decided that that was something they wanted to take on in the northwestern portion of the city, created some of the first public improvement districts that have been used in the city of Lubbock, and really found great success in creating new neighborhoods along the infrastructure that already existed. So the roadways that were already there, the sewage and water that was already there, made it so that building these houses was not necessarily very expensive for the city because a lot of that infrastructure was already there. That's one of the other benefits of growth in areas where we already have invested, because we essentially just get more value out of the roads, out of the pipes, out of the utility hookups that we've already put there. And so encouraging to see, definitely hope to see more of that. The growth in the marketplace will continue, as Adam mentioned. There's a whole medical campus being built in the southern portion of the city now that will continue to drive healthcare services growth in terms of the job market. Leprino Foods will be a very, very large employer on the most eastern portion of the city as well. So things are pointing up. It's very encouraging to look at that. And from just the measure of a political career or a political journey, really credit to the city council and to the mayor for guiding the city through this period of growth.
Yeah, agreed. Well, only one more quick update before we bring our guest on, and that is today I was at a ribbon cutting for the airport.
Yeah.
If anybody out there like myself who has not flown in a really long time, if you haven't been out to the airport, there's been a lot of work being done in the last 2 years that they had the ribbon cutting for today. So basically, it wasn't just so that it looks better. There was a lot of pretty much functional things that were done to make it actually a better experience for people who are traveling. In a minute, I'll ask Dr. Nick how his experience was. But so some of the project highlights, and this cost about $42 million is what I believe they said. And again, it's been done over these last 2 years. Lots of stuff has been going on over there. So they relocated the bag screening. I don't remember this part, but apparently there was like some sort of really wonky bag screening.
There was two, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like two different.
There was two baggage carousels on opposite sides. It made no sense.
Right. And so they've now one of the things they did was consolidate. Also, not just that, but they also consolidated the baggage claim area, and so that's all kind of in one place now. They of course updated the look of the place. It looks really nice. If you have a chance to check out my Facebook page, you can see part of it anyway, where we were at. It is a really nice look. Part of that is those really annoying loud floors, those super old tile floors that when you're trying to roll something across there were really loud. They took those out. They did explain though that at the time, which is an interesting thing I didn't know, at the time, no luggage was made with wheels on it, so they just didn't know, right? So that has been replaced with some I guess quieter flooring.
Yep.
And then also on the outside they took out the sidewalk that was kind of like little pebble looking thingies, and now it's like a smooth sidewalk. And so they have a roof replacement, and then of course they updated the stuff like the plumbing, the HVAC, and electrical and all of that good stuff. And so if you and they also did some things like we said to improve the flow. So Dr. Nick, did you have a better experience than you had before?
Absolutely. The timing worked out very well for the renovations being during a period in time where there was very little flight activity that was occurring. But as Adam mentioned, there were certain design choices when this airport was made that don't really make sense in hindsight anymore. One of them being the advent of luggage with wheels. And so both the gravel sidewalk on the outside, as well as the tiled, grouted flooring that was in the interior, it really was just a nightmare. You couldn't move through that airport without it being incredibly loud and hitting every single one of those ridges and bumps. So those changes, I think, are just everyone's going to really appreciate. Hopefully, some people won't even notice, and I think that's a good mark of a good design change on that. Yeah, it looks great overall. The hope is that it will continue to attract and expand the number of airline offerings. Actually, by June of this year, we're going to see Southwest essentially at full capacity again. We're only missing I believe a Denver flight from them is one of the things that we're missing, and one more, I think 2 more flights to Dallas Love Field for them. And those are expected to come back online by June. American, I think there's only 1 or 2 flights that we're missing from our original roster as well that we'll see come online in the near future. But our connectivity is almost back in terms of ability and flight times and number of flights. Still a little bit to go, but I think the improvements on the airport will definitely make it a much more enjoyable experience. The one knock that I will say is we had a Starbucks kiosk inside of the airport before, and that is now gone. And so there is no, whether it be Pete's or Starbucks or, we have Denver flights, so I'll say Caribou Coffee or any of these other sort of airport coffee vendors. We no longer have one of those in our airport, which I think should be fixed.
Yeah, it's
pretty common.
That does suck. And also, I forgot to mention, they updated and relocated the service dog area. There was a service dog area, relief area, and then they've also added a nursing room. So for nursing mothers, there's like a whole room. And it looks pretty comfy. So that should be good. And then there's also 3 family bathrooms that have been added. So anyway, go check it out. Try to fly somewhere, or the next time you fly, check out the airport and see what you think. But anyway, without further ado, we will bring on our very special guest for this evening. Dr. Katherine Wells is with us, and she will bring up her camera here in just a second. And everybody on the comments, don't forget you can put your question down in the comments and we will see them. We're watching them. And so welcome, Dr. Wells.
Well, let me correct you on the doctor part. I'm not a doctor. I'm actually applying for my doctorate. So we'll see, hopefully in a couple of years, you guys can officially call me doctor. But thanks for having me.
Miss Wells. Yes.
Public health director or Director Wells, we can still use that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, so Dr. Director Wells, now he's throwing me out. I'm just excited to have you on. We've had a chance to interact over the years, and to me, I think something that a lot of Lubbock citizens just don't see is public health in the city, and sort of the services that you provide, how those have changed over time for a lot of Lubbock citizens, because they don't necessarily access them or feel as though that they need them. They don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes. And, I was just curious if to start off the conversation, what is the value of public health to a community? So we're in a city where it wasn't too many mayors back where they thought about closing the public health department entirely. And I'm kind of curious, where do you see the value of a city having public health? And then how have you seen the department change in your tenure and the time that you've been here?
Thank you both for having me today. Really excited to be here. It's public health is one of those departments or one of those city services that when everything's going well, people tend to forget about us and don't think much about those public health services. However, when something comes along like a pandemic, we're front and center and on the news every day. A lot of the work that kind of modern public health systems do is really being that convener, looking at ways that we can bring together community partners, both medical providers, our different nonprofits, and what our group or what our city can do collectively to help improve overall health. The goal of the public health department is not to be providing direct patient care. In some cases we do, and it's usually when there isn't a provider to offer that care to citizens. But our goal is really to bring all of the different partners together, make sure we have healthcare services, and make sure that we're building infrastructure that leads to healthy lives. And that can be, things like clean water, streets, parks, different providers together.
Yeah, and then, it's exciting to me to have this conversation because I know a little bit of both your previous history and the work that you did in Austin before coming to Lubbock. But for folks who don't necessarily interface with public health in Lubbock, I was curious if you could just describe how have you seen the public health department change here in Lubbock in the time that you've been here, and talk a little bit about how your previous experiences have informed the work that you've done here.
Yeah, one of my real goals when I took over the public health department here in Lubbock was really to rebuild that system. Lubbock public health had pretty much been decimated. There was a time where they were trying to defund public health. They had actually gone through and laid off all of the staff. So we lost a lot of staff that went on and found other jobs. So when I started at the public health department, there were 10 staff. I made up 11. And when I took that job, I really asked the city if they were willing to grow the public health department. And, I've really had support from our mayor, city council, city management to allow me to find ways to grow that department. I'm really excited. We are just about to hire our 50th person to have on staff. So we've, 5 times the size, and our budget's probably 6 or 7 times the amount when I started. And that's not city taxpayer dollars, that's grant funding and other money that we've been able to bring in. A lot of the services that we're offering now are, we have our STD clinic and immunizations, which is direct patient care, but a lot of our work's really around linking individuals at risk for substance use disorder or at risk for poor health outcomes to the appropriate medical provider or to substance use treatment. We've also been able to expand our outreach staff. We have a lot more community health workers that we've hired. They're really out there in the community putting forward that public health message.
Wow. And then, a little bit about, because you came to Lubbock with an incredible wealth of experience in standing up health programs, public health programs in the past. How did you bring that type of thinking? Because in Lubbock, as you mentioned, you've really built at this point, you could say that Lubbock's public health department is your creation in terms of the programs, the activities. How did your previous experiences inform the way in which that you wanted to scale and build Lubbock's health department?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I would say we're definitely the largest health department in this area. I think we're now bigger than Amarillo's even, which had a fairly large health department. I started off my public health career working at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda. And that's really where I learned about core public health services and really saw how individuals could affect the health of a community. After I left Washington, I lived in Austin for 12 years, and I'm really into systems and I like to figure out how to make systems work and how to build systems within a government structure. So my big accomplishment in Austin was I actually created the state pharmacy assistance program for individuals with HIV, which was a program that allowed us to wrap around the Medicare Part D drug programs when they came on board, and we were able to get medications at about 1/10 of the cost the state was paying by harnessing Medicare programs. In the first year, that program was able to save $16 million to the state general fund. So just a little bit of money.
Right, exactly.
So with that mindset, I really came up to Lubbock and saw a system that needed to be fixed, that could be better, and really have worked to bring in dollars that the city had left on the table, bringing in some Medicaid administrative funding, which is just an easy $100,000 to bring in that requires no match. We were able to bring in some private foundation money. We've also been able to pull down both federal and state funding.
Wow. And, I love your interest in systems, right? And talking about how a modern health department is really about being a connector, right? Aligning stakeholders, making sure that services are not being duplicated, but are being synergistic. And I'm familiar with two of those efforts. one in creating sort of a standard database to share across the homelessness services provider consortium groups here that y'all have led. And then as well as the challenges you mentioned, substance use disorders, the challenges during the collapse of managed care, the organization that previously had held contracts with the state of Texas. And I'm kind of curious if there is either of those that you would want to comment about in terms of the role of the public health department in creating better systems or better connection to try to tackle those problems.
I'm putting my video on hold real fast. I'm sorry. Let me move closer to my internet connection. I'm at home.
Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah.
Oh, we experience this every time. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is that better now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm moving to my study or my husband's study. So a lot, I'm really, I guess one of the big, I'll start with the managed care efforts. So we've had, I don't know if people are familiar, but Managed Care Center for Addictive Disorders actually shut down in 2019.
Abruptly, yeah.
Abruptly. Like there was a sign on the door that told individuals that were in treatment that their treatment provider closed. That was probably one of the first times I met Nick, was working on this project. But I was frustrated that the state allowed a treatment provider to close and didn't have a backup plan. That was $3.5 million that was coming into Lubbock from the federal government to provide individuals with treatment options who were suffering from a substance use disorder. And the state was okay with just that going away. So I spent the next year advocating with the state of Texas to ensure that that money comes back into Lubbock. So right in 2020, during the pandemic, the state actually awarded the city that $3.5 million contract to allow for substance use disorders treatment to be supported in the city. It also allowed us to begin some prevention efforts around substance use disorder.
Wow. And, so I was, present for some of these in early meetings. And, if you want to talk about just how did the public health department bring together the substance use disorder services provider community, because there was a lot of conversations that were necessary to get to awarding that contract. And, what was that work like for y'all in terms of trying to make this happen, trying to build consensus?
Actually, this one I have to give credit to Councilman Christian. He tasked the health department with working to bring substance use providers, and he had this vision of this source to solution conference. We were putting together that conference, so I was starting to talk to the different providers in the community, figuring out what the need was at the time that managed care closed. So we were actually in a really good position to have those conversations with different partners and figure out that true need. And that gave me the data and the talking points to go in and start advocating for that funding with the state of Texas.
And I think it's just a great example of, when that happened, the heartbreak for, as you mentioned, how abrupt it was. For those that were in desperate need of services, I remember in some of those early meetings, there were counselors who said for some of their longtime patients, they were actually recommending them effectively commit some kind of crime to be able to go to the county jail, because it would be one of the only places where they could continue their treatment because of the fact that this facility had closed. And, it wasn't a mandate for Lubbock's public health department to take on that role. This wasn't something that all of a sudden it immediately, there's an arrow pointing to y'all from the regulator saying you must do this. It really was the initiative of the health department under your leadership that saw that this was a huge need and something that needed to be addressed. And the execution of it, as you mentioned, during a pandemic, to be able to successfully put that together, I think it's just, one of the examples of the benefits that we've experienced as Lubbock citizens from your leadership in the public health department. So, I think bringing up that topic, I wish more people knew about it and how big of a crisis that was for those that were in need during that time.
Yeah, and well, thank you for that. And I think the other really great part about how we're managing that funding is we're now giving patients choice. We have multiple subcontractors that are receiving that funding. So if a patient wants to leave Lubbock and get away from that group, they have a choice. We can take them up to Amarillo. They can stay here in Lubbock for that treatment. They can go to Plainview. So it's really finding open beds when the person chooses to seek recovery. So we have lots of options, and then also finding that right treatment provider for them. And I think whether or not you have insurance or uninsured or low income, it's so important for people to find the place that's the right fit and not be forced into one service provider just because they might not have the resources at the time.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I did want to kind of or have you talk about something that I caught in a city council meeting, and there's going to be a county and a city partnership with the health department. Is that right?
That is the plan right now. So we've been, before COVID, I've been advocating for a new public health facility, and it's been something that's been discussed on the city's as a need for the city. When they closed down the health department, they actually tore down the building. And that's where the current Fire Station 1 is located. And the health department is actually in rental facilities. So we've had a need for a public health department. It was probably going to be a couple of years down the road. However, with the pandemic and the influx of some of this ARPA funding, which one of the first priorities listed by the federal government with this is public health. The city is actually taking a chunk of that money to invest in a public health department. So we'll be getting a new building. And we're currently working with the county's building, and in return, the public health services. And then in the future, we'll probably have a contract of a certain contribution from the county to continue those public health services outside of city limits.
Wow. And what would you say, because sometimes there's territorialism, right? We get into disputes about our obligations for, say, ambulances sometimes with surrounding communities. For Lubbock citizens who feel like, we're essentially giving away services, or we're letting people mooch off of us or things like that, what would be your response when it comes to what are the benefits to having this collaboration between the city of Lubbock and being able to provide some of these services to the smaller surrounding rural communities around us?
Well, there's some financial benefits by expanding the public health service area that allows us to pull down additional funding through some of the formula allocations. Also, that will be serving rural areas, actually opens up the health department to look at some of the rural funding opportunities that are set forth by the federal government. When you're talking about like control of diseases, and especially communicable diseases, they don't know borders. They don't know if somebody, if somebody's crossing over a border, or if they're a resident of the county or a resident of the city. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water. We all shop in the same stores. It's important that we have that public health system to protect everybody that's in the area that's accessing services here or going back home.
That makes it makes a lot of sense to me. And I know from, being able to consolidate this and be a larger service provider, there are some efficiencies I think that are gained with that. And I also think it comes from just, if anything, there's a certain regional responsibility that Lubbock has because of our size, because of our scale, when it comes to the resources that we do have available. Even, for example, I don't think Littlefield could have somebody write a grant for a public health program, right? There isn't even necessarily capacity there to pursue, sort of opportunities in this. And so, to me, seeing this kind of collaboration, it's exciting. I feel like it does indicate sort of a different mindset or mentality for city leadership when it comes to thinking about resources and, how through these can we create win-win opportunities. And so I credit to you for pursuing that and finding the opportunities to move that conversation forward to the point where we are now. I think it's just very exciting.
I'm very excited about it. And, I think it's the right thing to do in this area. It's also going to give us, some say. Technically, individuals that are outside the city limits, it's the state that decides their public health needs. This will give voice to those individuals out in the county. We expect to have representation from members of the county on the Board of Health so that we can really look at how to move health of the whole area forward.
Yeah, I did have a question. We spoke about this a little bit in the beginning part of the show, and this has been something that I've been aware of for a little while. I know that, for instance, Covenant and UMC, those systems are experiencing shortages of staff, in the medical field in general. Has any of that touched the health department, or if it has, like, to what degree?
Well, it is difficult to hire individuals right now. The health department does, for nursing, for instance, I don't have the funding, to pay the same amount for a nurse at a public health department versus what the hospitals can pay, or even a doctor's office can pay. However, I can offer people flexibility and, a real opportunity to make, a difference for the whole community. So we have some vacancies. I've been trying very hard to hire a manager for my substance use program. And it's, we've gone through multiple candidates, but trying to find the right fit for some of those people. I really want someone that has a passion, that's willing to think outside the box, that's not scared of some hard work. I expect a lot from my staff. I expect a lot from myself, but I really do push all health department staff, from an administrative assistant at the front desk to my managers, that the whole goal and your mission has to be about the community and moving things forward.
Yeah, and this would be a good time to say to the audience. I know that a lot of folks that follow Lubbock Compact's work either work around or deal with folks who deal with substance issues. So if anybody out there is looking for a career or a way to help even more, consider contacting Ms. Wells in the health department, because I think I've had two very close friends in particular, many friends, but two very close friends that I grew up with who have struggled with methamphetamine use. And so I have had very intimate experience with all of that. And I know how hard it continues to be on their mother, and just their family in general. And so I think that that's a very important thing. And I'm glad that you guys are focusing on that. So anybody,
and we really hope that with our new building, that we will have a place that individuals that are seeking recovery or struggling from substance use disorder can drop in and get information. The health department now provides Narcan. We have clean needle kits, we have wound care kits. We're trying to offer all of the prevention, education, and also support through treatment for those in need.
And that's a great place to go, because we haven't dived into it too much yet. The new public health department building.
Yes.
Talk about, what services you mentioned this, will there be any expansion of current services? Or, what are going to be the things that excite you about this new property, this new building?
Well, the first thing is it's going to be welcoming. Every time I've talked to the architects, it has to be a place that serves the community equally. It has to be a place that people want to come into and that they feel special or welcomed when they come in. So it's going to have 20-foot ceilings when you walk in that into that building compared to the 6'4" ceilings that we have in our current waiting room that many people bump their heads on either the pipes or the ceilings coming through. It will have at least 6 clinic spaces. We're in the process of adding a nurse practitioner into the health department. And I don't quite know how those services are going to expand for clinical services, but we will be able to offer a much higher level of care than we currently do. We will also have nice rooms for our substance use staff to actually meet with clients. And then we will have plenty of office space. Right now, all of my staff is doubled up in offices and very weirdly configured cubicles. I'm trying to get them to fit into different rooms. So just a real place for staff to come. We'll also have a room that's large enough to hold 100 individuals. So we can offer classes. We'll be able to host our Board of Health meeting. We're also looking at having a teen room to allow, especially target around substance use disorder, but looking at having some services for teens after school where they can come to the health department and meet with counselors and meet with teens that are seeking recovery also. We're also looking at some garden spaces and bike racks, and I have a long list of everything that's going into that building. But if I don't ask for it, they're not going to give it to you.
Right. And another part too to me is the importance of location, right? And so when you were thinking about where this facility might be, what were some of the considerations about, how do you, Lubbock, it's tough. We're really sprawling. Our bus system is not necessarily the greatest, so how did you think about where you wanted to have this physical presence, and what our area of the city, or how did that choice come about?
Yeah, we definitely, I didn't have much choice in it. That's kind of comes up to the city, the facilities committee. But for me, I really wanted it to be centrally located. I wanted it to be on a major artery that individuals could get there both by bus and by car. So it's going to be on 50th Street and U. And we're actually taking over the old Savers grocery store there. So I think it'll be a real asset to that street and an investment into that area. I'm just excited that there's going to be, some restaurants and other places that staff can walk to what's currently there, because it's been a vacant building for quite a long time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm trying to, how close is that to CC's Pizza?
It's a little ways away. Yeah,
okay, I'm trying to remember I'm trying to remember that shop, like what's in that.
Well, there was a Taco Bell there.
Is there a Taco Bell there?
But there's a Taco Bell, there's a
Poly Bear
Cabana.
Oh, okay.
And there's still a Dollar General in the shopping center, which is a bit of a point of contention, but
yeah. I like the fact too that you're focusing on the experience of the environment and the culture. Folks that know me know that I talk about this all the time. When I talk about building teams or working together with folks, the culture matters so much to just everybody, not only the patients, the people who will be coming in, but for the staff who have to, provide these services. Nobody wants to go work at a place where it sucks, and it drains you. Your work is already tough enough, I'm sure. And I'm sure it's also tough on the other end, with the patients who may be in an uncomfortable situation or what have you. And so I think that's really commendable that you're focused on creating a good culture and environment there.
We're definitely excited about it, and we're excited about light. Our health department currently has 2 windows and they're both doors. There's no natural light in the building, and this is going to have some skylights. I have an office window for the first time in my life.
Oh, wow.
With everything I have done, I have never had a window in my office. So
yeah, no, it's definitely time. And, one of those areas that I think about, this idea of a welcoming place. Lubbock, there are certain aspects of our community that are still, a bit 20th, but maybe even 19th century when it comes to the issues like, say, sexually transmitted infections. And the number of friends and folks that I know that talk about having these kind of negative experiences when attempting to get treatment, right? About feelings of judgment, right? And so, the challenges that they have is of, say, like, wanting to get medication for, say, herpes, and how providers in Lubbock oftentimes are still quite judgmental about these things and providing access. And so, to create a sense of space and place where people aren't necessarily feeling that level of stigma, which they typically will sometimes have in a general practice or doctor's office here in Lubbock. I think that just alone, it sets a certain tone for folks and understanding that, it's safe to be here. It's safe to come here. This isn't something I have to suffer alone, that I have that opportunity. So I think that's so wonderful to incorporate that into thinking about the design and, how to make those improvements.
And we're even going to have iPad check-in,
Oh, wow.
which will do your symptom screening so that you don't have to tell somebody through a window why you're there. And when you get called up to the window to check in, that person will already know why you're there. So
very nice.
It's really about equity and access and, humanity, and treating everybody the same, regardless if you come there for immunization, if you come there for a TB test for your work, or if you come there for STD services.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is a great way to kind of wrap things up here. And so is there anything, I guess, going on right now or coming up that you would like to let folks know about, either resources you guys are offering, events, anything? You got the floor to let everybody know.
Please check out our Facebook page, our department website. We have all of that announced there. If you haven't gotten your COVID vaccine, please come get it, or your booster.
Awesome. Well, anything else, Dr. Nick, before we?
I'm trying to think of, to leave on an optimistic note. You've done so much already in Lubbock and with Lubbock's public health department. And to me, I think the question I want to find, sort of end with is just, where do you go from here? What's next for public health in Lubbock? What's next? When you think about leveling up or sort of, what are sort of the next stages or vision for public health that you see going forward in the Lubbock community?
My big goal for kind of the next couple of years is really developing a strategic plan for public health in the community. And hopefully that will tie in our surrounding communities and our surrounding counties. I'd really like to have a bigger partnership with Texas Tech University, especially with that they have now launched a public health program.
Right.
So looking at how you can partner both an academic institution with this government entity to kind of create a pipeline for future public health workers in the state of Texas and around the country.
Oh, I love it. I'm so grateful that you took the time this evening to come on the show. And, I'm hopefully our listeners are a lot more informed about Lubbock's public health department. Why on this show, we talk about it so much and promote it, just because, I think giving people an opportunity to have an understanding of what's going on behind the scenes and the work there is just so important to be able to appreciate this service that really is providing such an essential programming for the city of Lubbock, and that so many people rely on the services that you'll provide, and just simply allowing people to know, what it is and what you've been able to accomplish in the time that you've been running it. So, yeah, just very grateful and thankful you came on today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no problem. And we do have a couple of shout outs to Miss Wells. So Kim says that everything you're doing is incredible for the city, and congratulations on your 50th employee. Lisa says, thank you for your work, with a heart emoji. Very nice. And then B says, I guess the new building, she says it's going to be just like the old 1970 health department on 50th Street.
Oh, interesting.
Are you aware of the old health department?
We have moved 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
So I'm not sure which one was on 50th Street. I know the one on Kemper, and then the one that was on 19th Street. But my historian of public health is retiring. Our assistant director is retiring on Friday after 32 years working for the department. So maybe in retirement, she can put together a nice, nice history of public health in Lubbock.
She should definitely write that book.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed. Wow.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah. Thanks once again for coming on. And then, folks, we will be back here next week. We've got lots coming up in the future shows. We're going to be talking to some LISD school board candidates. We'll of course keep you updated. Lots of stuff going on in the city. And so make sure you catch us here next week. I know we took some breaks there for a minute, but we will be back on every week for the foreseeable future. And this is, of course, your weekly reminder to join your neighborhood association. And thank you to Miss Wells. Thank you to everybody who keeps up with the show and who watched and who commented. And we will see you all later. Good night.